Okay, so for my low-tech adaptive equipment, my client was a 7-year-old boy with third-degree burns on his face, arms, and hands from a firework display. He is one of 3 children at home and has supportive parents. I also added that he would be in 2nd grade, so school age is important to make a note of, I think, for my adaptive equipment. And he enjoys playing sports and being active with his friends, especially playing on his baseball team. So for the client factors, my piece of adaptive equipment will be working on joint range of mobility and joint range of motion within the DIP, the PIP, and the MCP joints, because he'll be working on grabbing like around the ball and really like pushing those joints down and trying to get more flexion out of them. And the more and more he's able to squeeze, the greater range of motion will increase and things like that. Another factor, muscle tone would be increased. Theoretically, over time, I would like to say like the ball we could get like a little bit of a stronger and stronger ball where he could squeeze, just to keep working on those muscles and getting him stronger, so it's easier for him to squeeze and grab other things. Muscle endurance within the hand, I would say, also would be increased over time because like within my activity and using this piece of adaptive equipment, more and more, the muscles of the hands will get used to that motion more. At first, within my activity, I'll have him do trials just to kind of start building endurance. But I think even just using this as like a normal piece of adaptive equipment for him, his endurance will get bigger and bigger or greater and greater over time. I also added that voluntary control of voluntary movement, or like hand-eye coordination, will be worked on. Specifically, I'll just show one idea with this adaptive equipment that I thought of would be like, because he is school age, be having like a pen, and because it's hard to just grab a pen if you don't have any range of motion in those joints of the finger. So this would be a way for him just to be able to work on holding a pen and still being successful in school. So that would be hand-eye coordination, is really working on where he would be writing, and things like that. Also within my activity, he'd be working on hand-eye coordination, because I'll have him like pick things up with this. As you can see, there's a slit in here. I also added that fine motor control would be used, because he'll have to be using his hands and fingers just to manipulate the ball and use it that way. Also, for my activity, I added that it would be gross motor control, just of using the arm, because if you're picking something up with it and having to move it, that would still be gross motor control of like the arm and shoulder and things like that. Performance skills, that would be utilized with the piece of adaptive equipment, reaching for things, because with my piece of equipment, I have this designed to like pick things up instead of using like the tips of your fingers. So reaching for things like the pen, if it's over, let's see if we can see this. If like the pen's here, I would reach appropriately and grab it using my piece of adaptive equipment here. Also, we'll be working on gripping, because gripping the ball is important. That's kind of like the first step we'll be working on, is being able to hold onto the ball and hold it in such a way that it can be used effectively as an adaptive tool. And then I also have manipulating. So it's kind of important which way the slit is going here to pick things up. Like if it's going this way and I go to pick up a pen, it's not really going to work too well for him. So he'll have to kind of manipulate it with his hand or his fingers. He might even need to use his other hand at the start to kind of manipulate the ball within his hand, just to hold it in such a way that this can be effective. So those were the motor skills of performance skills. Processing skills that would be used with my adaptive equipment would be like handling things. So if he's picking up a pen, moving it from or picking up whatever and moving it from one place to the other. He's got to make sure he's handling it in a way that it's not going to fall out of it while he's transporting or things like that. The second processing skill that I said would be used is continuing. So after he picks something up, like what's the next step for him to use, making it like a smooth process. I also said for my activity, because he'll be picking things up in like a timed way, not stopping from each thing he picks up, just kind of continuously going, moving on to the next thing he's going to pick up without hesitating. And then I also have searching and locating as a processing skill. So grabbing things in like a logical way that makes sense. He would be, for my activities, picking up pom-poms. So it wouldn't make sense to grab things from one side of the table, put it in a container, and then go all the way across the other side of the table and grab the next one. It's just kind of working within one area, keep moving as it makes sense. And then for social interactions with my piece of adaptive equipment, I think this would be great for him to be like playing with kids, just as like a general thing. A lot of my three kind of relate to my specific activity that I'm doing with my adaptive equipment. So for one, I just said like asking questions. So like within the activity, I would expect him to ask like appropriate follow-up questions if you're telling him how to pick something up. Like if I'm teaching him how to pick things up with it, and I show him and he has a question, I would expect him to ask a question that kind of relates to this, and like further like clarification questions. Also, I would think that the OT could kind of like facilitate this part of social interaction by like giving vague descriptions of how to use it, and it's kind of like prompting him to ask more questions so it makes a little bit more sense to him. Also, this one also kind of relates to the activity that I have planned for this, but acknowledging and encouraging. So if I was giving him the directions on how to use this, I would expect him to like acknowledge and that he heard what I was saying to him, and that he, even just like a little head nod, would give me some sort of clue that he understands what I was saying and how to use it. And then this would also be transferred to like school settings, just working on those like sequencing in school, like if he's getting directions from a teacher, so he'll know how to move forward and understands how to use his piece of adaptive equipment when he's in even like a different setting other than just like an OT session. The last one I have is looks. So anytime I would expect him to be talking with anybody, that he is looking at looking at the person who's talking to him, and looking at like any demonstrations that are being shown. Like if I model how to use this, I would expect him to watch and then kind of apply that to his own work. So I'll just show, I actually have like a couple uses for this. So it's just a standard tennis ball, and I cut a slit across one side. And this is essentially just the adaptive equipment itself. It's just the tennis ball with a couple slits in it. So I would say that this piece of adaptive equipment is helping him like grip things, but my first idea was for him to use this in school as like a holder, so to easily write as in school. I know there's a lot of technology and equipment that way, but even like just touching a screen, you would use one finger. So this could essentially be like used with a pencil, like an unsharpened pencil, and use the eraser side. So it could be used as like a stylus if writing is still a little bit too challenging. I also think that this would just work on not only writing, but he'd be simultaneously working on gripping and increasing that range of motion within his fingers, the finger joints, the DIP, PIP, and MCP. The ball would essentially just be a temporary piece of adaptive equipment for him, for writing or even eating, using like utensils to feed himself. And then lastly, I thought this would be something, because if he doesn't have that fine motor skill yet of like picking up a pen with the tips of his fingers or any other objects that kind of fit in here, he would just essentially have to squeeze his hand, open up the slit here, and then let go, and it picks this up. But then he would still have to work on gripping the ball. So there's a lot of different aspects in it. Yeah, so just using and manipulating his fingers and his hand with the ball to use it as an adaptive tool for the lack of fine motor skills from the scars after a burn. So that's really the main goal. So over time, if the range of motion and the scarring really improves, we could either do like a smaller ball, so we could still start grabbing a little bit more. Here's an example. I have like a little Easter egg here. If he still couldn't like totally get his fingers close together like this, he could work on something a little bit smaller, but it would still get his joints a little bit more flexed. And then we could just kind of work it down to like using utensils or grabbing things specifically with his fingers. So yeah, that's my piece of adaptive equipment.